Hey everyone, welcome to Be Our Guest, our weekly virtual happy hour with industry professionals. I'm Dev Janke, Artistic Director of Live and in Color. We are an artist-serving organization dedicating to developing new stage works that promote and celebrate diversity. This month is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and we are spending this time celebrating the AAPI community. And in honor of AAPI month, all donations made during this program will be matched dollar for dollar. So please make a tax-deductible donation today to support our artists by going to liveandincolor.org right now and double your impact today. So it's time to grab a cocktail and start leaving your questions for our amazing guests in the comments. Please help me welcome three incredible multi-hyphenate artists who are creating new stories and representing their communities in such beautiful ways. Give a very warm welcome to three Live and in Color alum, singer, actor, writer Cheeyang. Hello, writer, director, actor Jessica Wu, and composer and singer-songwriter Janet No. Hello, my friends.
Hello.
Hi, Dev.
So lovely to see you. Happy AAPI month.
Woo.
How are you all?
Awesome. Better now that we're on here. I get to see your lovely faces.
It's so good to see you too. And can you tell us all where you're tuning in from, Janet?
I'm in New York City.
Great. Cheeyang?
I'm also in New York City. I'm in Washington Heights.
Fantastic. And Jessica?
New York City as well, East Harlem.
We're all in New York. I'm so happy to have you with me today, and we're going to be talking about some of your amazing projects and hearing some of your work. But first, I want to ask each of you, what made you fall in love with the arts and musical theater initially at a young age? What brought you into this crazy industry that we call show? Cheeyang, you want to go first?
Wow, where do we begin? I'll keep the story short. I have never been exposed to theater as a kid. I've always been a singer, and I came to America in 2010 for a callback, and I saw theater for the first time, and I was like, oh, this is something that I would love to do. And never in, my entire life have I ever thought of pursuing theater as a career. And I basically stumbled into writing for theater. So I don't know. Everything about the theater and the joy that it has brought me over the years has all been very recent, but every single time I come back to theater, there's some kind of new thing that I discover, and it's been amazing.
Do you remember what the first show you saw was?
I always say that it's Wicked, but it's actually Mary Poppins. But I did buy the Wicked tickets first because they were sold out that night. And I went to see Mary Poppins. Anyway, very complicated story. Long story short.
And Jessica, what was the spark for you?
Well, first I have to comment on the fact that Cheeyang, you stumbled into writing musical theater. That's amazing. Considering your work. So I think probably opposite of Cheeyang. I just remember being so I grew up as in Canada or in rural Canada. And what we have a lot of is competition dancing. I think maybe a lot of folks maybe start off this way who are dancers. And it's a lot of recitals and tap and jazz and these competitions that we would do as kids. And I used to, that was the majority of my childhood, was growing up as a dancer. But there were these really long car rides that I would take with my mom, and we would listen to original Broadway soundtracks. And I just remember falling in love with Lea Salonga and Daphne Rubin Vega and all these incredible singers. And here we are. And Janet, I know you have a super wild journey into this business. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Well, okay, I'll just answer the question, how did I fall in love with MT? I think it started when I was 3. The story that my dad and my mom like to tell all the time is when I was apparently 3 years old or 2, depending on how braggadocious they're feeling. I apparently like learned and played all the songs from Sound of Music and by ear on this like little toy keyboard that I had. And like, I think it's because I love that movie so much. I just loved how like badass Maria is. Like, she got all the naughty kids to listen to her just by singing Doe a Deer. And so, I mean, how awesome would it be if we can just get like people to listen to us just by like singing the song? I think that was just like my first time seeing how music can like really change the trajectory of someone's narrative and perspective. And like actually just the other day I came across this quote. I wish I came up with it, but it was like, words make you think a thought, music makes you feel a feeling, a song makes you feel a thought. And it's from Yip Harburg, and I just think that's why musical theater is so powerful.
Will you talk a little bit about what your crazy story about getting into writing? Because that's a very famous story that ended up in a musical, a little musical.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So I used to work on Wall Street as an investment banker. I was like super into finance from college. I was so I was like really into it. Like I was enraptured by the drama of it all, like the whining and dining, like the hustle, the fast pace, the super competitive, like gates that you have to push through to like get into the club. But then once I got in the club, once I became the like what quintessential New York City Wall Street banker, I got like so disillusioned. Like I did not wake up in the mornings wanting to open my Bloomberg app to check where the markets were at. Like that's just not like where my passions were. Okay, and long story short, like I got so lost and depressed, like probably clinically depressed, but at the time like therapy was like not an option, so I didn't like seek therapy. Instead, I walked outside and like to wander to like where I thought all the cool creatives hung out, and that was Washington Square Park. There was this purple sign, NYU flag. I like walked in, got up into the elevators. The first like floor that the elevator doors opened into, there was this like hand scribbled sign on the wall saying Graduate Musical Theater Writing Program. I was like, what the hell is that? Like, that's a thing? And I just followed the signs to the administrative office. And Brian, the admin there, was like, there's an open house tonight if you want to come through. I was like, okay, I have nothing better to do. And then, that was my first exposure to musical theater writers. And it's like coming from the finance world, coming from the corporate world, then meeting like Broadway, theater people, it's like, right? I mean, it's just night and sorry to corporate people, but it's just like night and day different. So I was like, what is this? I want a part of this. There's like no way I'm going to get in, but I'm going to apply anyway. I had like written a few songs, but I got a scholarship. So I was like, okay, this is a sign from God that like
absolutely.
Maybe.
It's a special like higher power moment being.
Yeah, you kind of just have to lean into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, all three of you are extraordinary artists, and you pursue multiple disciplines. You're actors, you're writers, you're directors, you're producers, what has drawn you to the sort of variety of disciplines, besides being Asian and being, trying to overcompensate. Cheeyang, what is you?
I think for me, it's like the idea that if you want something done, you kind of have to do it yourself. Yeah. Not in like a bad way, but in this industry where when I first started, I came to America in 2011 officially, and every turn, everything that I went, every audition that I went to, I started out as an actor, as a musical theater actor, and everywhere that I went, people kept saying no, but not because I wasn't good or, it was like, I don't have any spots for you. I don't have a role for you that fits the voice type that you have. I don't have a role for you that fits the way you look, or, there's just a bunch of no's. And I came from Singapore where I got a lot of yeses. And so that was like a big shift. And I'm like, well, if I'm good enough for where I came from, why am I not good enough in America? And so I started doing things for the sake of my joy and my sanity and making things happen. So And I think that was like the biggest reason why I stumbled into writing. It really came from like, well, if there's no story really for me to play, then I'm gonna write one for myself. And here comes Eastbound. Like that was the genesis of the show initially. And the more I created, the more I wrote, the people that I interacted with, everybody felt a sense of like, oh, let's do something together. Let's make something happen together. And the more people you meet, the more you do it, and then the rest is history.
Jessica, how about you?
Oh goodness. So probably similar to Cheeyang, where I started off as a dancer in my career. Like I've spent the majority of my career in the chorus, and I feel like I've been extremely lucky to have done like kind of a large variety of shows, but the shows that I imagine, you could probably guess that I've done the most of, I've done like 6 or 7 King and I's. I've done 4 or 5 Miss Saigons. I've done, chorus line 4 or 5 times in that one role. And it's just like, for me, it became a lot about like seeing this incredibly talented community of Asian American actors and artists that we have, and us all kind of like getting into these rooms and either fighting over like one token spot, or we're all bowing down before King of Siam like over and over and over again, or playing Asian prostitutes. So like 5 or 6 years ago, I kind of like fell back into writing. It was something I did in high school, and then I went off and did my my performing career. And then I was at Goodspeed, which if anybody's ever worked at Goodspeed, it is in the winter. I was in a house by myself with my dog in the middle of winter for 4 months, and I started writing. And for me, like it just kind of became this thing where I just like spit out a show and I didn't really know what to do with it. But in the years since then, it became very important for me that everything that I write is meant to be an opportunity or a place for representation for Asian American women. So there's at least something else out there that is not The King and I and Miss Saigon or Connie and a Chorus Line. And that's really important to me.
Yeah, I think that's a theme for all of us, trying to create space at the table for us. You brought it up already, but I want to just mention that all 3 of you are amazing, have had amazing theater careers as performers as well. Jessica appearing on Broadway in Miss Saigon and A Chorus Line, Cheeyang headlining at Joe's Pub for the Theater Factory, and Janet, you performed in Rocktopia.
Yeah.
How does performing influence you as a writer? Does it change the experience? Does it make it better? Janet, you want to jump in?
Yeah. Well, actually, right before the pandemic, you might not know this because I didn't really talk about it much, but I made my actor's debut in the Broadway show Mac and Mabel at New York City Center Encores. And that was like wild because I did not ever think that piano skills would get me an actor's role. Basically, they needed someone who could play the piano, sing, and do lines. And how it was an interesting moment for me because I got to play the role of a female composer in that show. Normally Mac and Mabel is not, I think it's a white show. I actually didn't know much about Mac and Mabel before. I probably shouldn't admit that. But it was really cool to play this, principal role of Ella as this Asian female. And I got to put my personality, because I knew nothing about the show, right? So I just kind of put my personality into it. And instead of thinking about it oh, I'm an Asian person in an otherwise white role, I was just I'm gonna be myself. And that's kind of really informed my writing over the past year during the pandemic too. It's so funny, before, especially when I was new to writing, I kind of always, I saw myself as an Asian female writer. And always like, you know, when I got opportunities, I kind of always assumed, oh, I got that because I'm an Asian female writer. And then now I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna just think about myself as a goddamn great writer. Like, I happen to be Asian, I happen to be female, but I'm a goddamn good writer first. And the story, and even in telling stories, like for the longest time, I mean, sorry, like you can cut me off if I'm rambling too much, but I'm so passionate about this because it's a new revelation for me. I realize not every story I tell has to be about like being an Asian person or being an Asian female. Like that doesn't have to be so on the nose. And I felt really guilty about that at first, like when I was trying to reconcile, like, is it okay for me to be an Asian person, not just writing Asian stories? Because I realized like over the course of the past year and like lots of therapy and lots of like learning how to self-love, just living and being my story is social justice enough. Just telling the story that I want to tell is revolutionary enough. And inevitably, me being Asian, me being female, me having grown up as a Korean American in America is going to come through. And it does. When I don't think about it, it comes through. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so beautiful. I mean, I think for all of us, I think if we're our authentic selves, you know, it shines through in the work. And I want to, since we're talking about all your writing, I actually want our audience to hear some of your amazing stuff. So, Jessica, I believe you brought a little song to share with us. Could you tell us a little bit about it and set it up for our audience, and then we'll play it?
Yeah. So this is Easy to Love. So this is from Yumi Iwee, and this show went through so much development, and this is kind of the version that we landed on, which is kind of a play with. It's a dance play with music, with 3 singer actors, and then a dance ensemble. And the 3 singer actors play the voices inside of the main dancer's head. So it's the voices that she, like her own inner monologue. It's the voices of the other characters, like in the show, and yeah. So I'm really excited to share it.
All right, and does this need any other setup, or we can?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. So this is a song that occurs as like, I don't, if anybody's ever been in a relationship, especially not a great one, which I imagine that most people have experienced. There are times when you like fight with somebody, and you know that this should be the fight that ends all fights. This should be the fight that you like, you are so different and you need to walk away. But it's inevitably in relationships, we always keep on coming back. So that's this moment.
Fantastic. This is Easy to Love.
You're back. This isn't where our story ends. It's not a tale we cannot mend. Take my hand, we're still
Yay!
Yay!
So beautiful. Jessica, really, I mean, I know the piece because it was a finalist for Live and in Color, and I'm just such a huge fan of it. The movement in the piece was especially beautiful. How does dance and movement help you to tell your story? I mean, you're a dancer at heart, so I get it, but tell our viewers how.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the it's another one of those like old quotes or whatever, right? Where it's like, you know, when the emotion gets so big, when in like a play, that's when people start to sing, and then when the emotion of singing gets so large and can't be expressed through music anymore, that's when you dance. And this is kind of almost a reversal of all of that in a weird way for me. But I guess like for me, dance has always just been such a huge part of my life, and it's just really meaningful to be able to, you know, put it all together and to work with amazing choreographers. And also, I think so many of us started off as actors and as performers, and there's kind of a really interesting and brilliant moment when you hand off your work to someone else to do, and what another brain and set of talent can infuse and change and metamorph it, and that's kind of I think just the most wonderful thing about working with like the different disciplines inside of musical theater.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the things about musical theater. There are so many elements to it: the writer, the music, the director, the choreographer, the set. Like it's really a sum of its parts. This is sort of a very broad question, but maybe you can speak to it. It's like you're all individuals, but what are your processes like when you're working on a new project? Like when you when you come up with a new idea or you're diving into it, what are like some of the things that you turn to or do first? Cheeyang, do you want to try?
I don't have like a straightforward answer, but I think the clearest thing is like I always come from story. I think story is the most important. It doesn't matter, you know, the details really don't matter. You kind of want to. It comes from character and story. So anytime I write, even if it's a standalone piece or you know, delving into any of the full length pieces that I've been working on, it always comes from, you know, what story do I want to tell, and also a lot of times when I write, it has to do with the questions that I have in the moment. So like if, you know, the genesis for Maya was me thinking, well, me and my collaborator thinking like, what is an artist's place in the world, right? Can one person make a difference or not? And that like from that kernel of an idea, it informs kind of like where the story goes. And same with Eastbound, the questions that I had really had to do with personal things and, you know, what does it mean to be Asian in America, you know, as an immigrant, you know, what is that like? And vice versa, what does it mean to be Asian American, you know, coming to Asia? So usually I write from stories and questions. So, yeah.
Right. And Janet, what how do you approach your songwriting when you,
Oh God, lately, I think because like my biggest problem is I overthink. So lately I just try to dive right in and like just ride off of the initial impulse that got me excited to write the thing in the first place. Because once I start like thinking, like analyzing, like, oh, is this lyric good enough? Like, oh, is that melody like too, you know, the writing becomes not fun anymore. So I just have to like just remind myself. And sometimes I will, actually not sometimes, all the time, I will record myself when I first think of something, and that usually captures, like on my phone, you know, I'll record on voice memo, and that usually captures that initial like spark, like, oh my God, that excitement. And I find it very helpful to go like keep going back to that as I'm going through the evolution of the piece.
I have to say, I remember that was one of my favorite things that you would do. You would always send me voice message memos of just a snippet of a song. And it was so fun to get like, what do you think of this refrain? And I'd be like, that's a great idea. Go write that song.
Yeah. You were the ultimate empowerer.
Totally. Janet, you actually have a video of a song you wrote. Will you tell us a little bit about it and set it up before we play it?
Yeah, so I actually wrote this for New York Film Academy's like tongue-in-cheek Not Working, you know, based off of Working, the musical Not Working. But it came out at that project came at a time when I was unpacking some like really heavy, dark stuff from a past toxic relationship. And it was like, and I wrote this song kind of like tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, am I talking about COVID, this toxic virus, which I got, and I got really sick and it like knocked me down, or this toxic relationship, which pretty much like had the same symptoms. So I wrote this for the show, and also wrote this for myself because I was like, you know what? By the time I wrote it, I was actually better. I had like recovered, and yeah, it was a very therapeutic, cathartic thing for me to be able to like finish writing the song, even though it's just one song.
Great. And what is the song called?
It's called Kicking You Out.
Kicking You Out. Here we go.
It was just one drink, just one kiss. I didn't think it would lead to this. Now I'm all up. I can't be seen. Got me so stuck in quarantine, I got fevers and these body aches. Can't get myself out of bed. Don't know how much of this I can take. You got all in my head, it's all in my head, yeah. I can't taste this food in my mouth, it's got me so down. I can't leave the front of my house, get out of this town. No, I don't know when I'll be myself again, but I can't let this take over, so I'm kicking you out. 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 Oh, you stay quiet, see me nonchalant, but I don't buy it. I know what you want. You want me to be weaker, so you can take control. Sink into me deeper. Yeah, you just want more, just want more. I got loneliness and heartbreak. Can't see none of my friends. Oh, and I'm lying here wide awake, wonder when I will end, when I will end. Yeah, I can't taste this food in my mouth, it's got me so down. I can't leave the front of my house, get out of this town. No, I don't know when I'll be myself again, but I can't let this take over, so I'm kicking you out. 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 Oh, I got loneliness and heartbreak. Can't get myself out of bed, but my life that you try to shake, I'm taking back instead, taking back instead. Yeah, I will taste this food in my mouth. No, I won't stay down. I will leave the front of my house, get out of this town. Yeah, I don't know when I'll be myself again, but I won't let this take over, so I'm kicking you out. 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 I'm kicking you out.
Yay! So great. I just love hearing you sing.
Aw.
It's a great song. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
You know, it's so wonderful to hear about, but I guess you answered the question earlier, but you've been very creative during quarantine Janet, haven't you? Have you been writing a lot?
Yeah, a lot of it, I'm not gonna lie, came from like sadness and a place of like mental instability, which I
for a lot of
find.
people.
Yeah. So I'm not actually sure what to do with a lot of the stuff I wrote, because it's like some of it's pretty dark, and but I think learning to really love myself has been the biggest source of creativity, like more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely I think a theme for a lot of us, especially in this day and age for Asians. You know, in this time where we're getting a lot of flack from the world.
Yeah.
So you know, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then the musical element of having to work virtually, that I think has been a challenge for all of us. Can we talk a little bit about that? I know, Jessica, you were working on a new musical, Poupelle of Chimney, which is set to premiere in Tokyo, and I know you've been writing that virtually. Can you tell us a little bit about that process?
Oh my God, writing musicals virtually is it's just the hardest. Oh my God, it's the hardest. Especially really long story short, I got commissioned to write the English book and lyrics and collaborate with a composer who was in Boston for a lot of the early part of our collaboration in December 2019. And we were supposed to have like an off-Broadway premiere in September of 2020. They had like booked the theater and everything, and then COVID hit in March. And so, for months we were like, oh, well, we just need to finish writing it. We need to finish developing it. And we just kept on plugging away until it was very clear that nothing was going to happen in September of 2020. And the company in Japan was gracious enough and just so lovely during our development to help us. And they did a virtual presentation for the Japanese fans. And because there's a long story behind the underlying material. But in any case, just like to write music and collaborate with any kind of live music via Zoom was just the steepest learning curve of 2020. But I think it was just such an amazing, crazy time, because I felt like suddenly all of us in the entire industry were standing on the same square on March 13th, where like suddenly everything that we knew was gone, and all of us who knew how to do things or kind of knew how to do things or had structural support in other ways suddenly just all ended up back in the same square. And what has been really amazing and crazy has been how each person doing what we do has figured out their own lane of developing, especially music and shows, and doing virtual reads and virtual singing and piecing things together in a asynchronous way in the last, what has it been, 15, 16 months.
Yeah.
The show's opening in some form in November in Tokyo, and I'll be there. So
That's amazing. That's amazing. Cheeyang, I know you've been very busy working virtually, creating all sorts of content. Do you want to talk a little bit about the stuff you've been doing?
It's kind of crazy that you say that I've been really busy, because all I feel is like I've done nothing in this time.
All your video you've done is really,
Thank you. There was this New York Times article that was like, the word for 2021 is languishing. And I was like, that's me. That's me. I think developing on Zoom and developing virtually has been insane. There's no way you can do really music development. But I think the thing that me and my collaborators have found useful is we've been developing a lot of the book for both of my shows, both Eastbound and Maya. And I think both shows, the book is like, oh, this is significantly better than where we started before the pandemic. Because usually in a 20-hour reading process or any workshop process, you're like, learn the music and sing the thing and do, it's always that. And then you end up not really thinking about story and what drives the story and plot and characters. So we've been doing a lot of book work. And in terms of like music and videos and stuff, I think I've just been really lucky because we got to do NAMT. So for Eastbound, we did a bunch of like demos and videos for the festival. And for me and my just like sanity, I've just been like, I want to sing and I want to create stuff. And so I got a bunch of my friends. I was like, do you want to do this? And they're like, sure, let's do it. So it's really just been fueling my joy rather than like, because every time I do something and I post it, I don't go like, come and watch this thing and do, you know, I usually don't kind of, because there's just so much content out there right now, like in our virtual world that like, I'm like, this can be for me so that I feel happy in this moment and I'm just going to share it. And if you want to see it, great. If you don't, great. Because there's just so many amazing people out there, you know? So that's kind of been my process. And
well, you definitely have brought a lot of people a lot of joy by sharing those videos.
Thank you.
And you actually have brought another video of yours from yours and Eric Sorrell's musical Maya, which was developed with Live and in Color 2 years ago. Amazing musical. Would you like to talk a little bit about the show and introduce the song? And
yeah, totally. So Maya is a show that's set in 1930s British India. And without giving much away, this song, I think this song was the first song we wrote for the musical, and it's gone through many iterations, but it's kind of stayed the same-ish. And it's the end of Act 1 where our protagonist Maya has to make a decision of whether she wants to join Gandhi's Salt March, which at the time it was a nonviolent protest that was to protest the British taxes on salt. And that march itself has inspired many countless nonviolent protests since 1930. So it just kind of felt like the right moment to kind of do the video during quarantine because of all the social justice things that were happening. And like history is repeating itself. And there are a lot of things that we can learn from history. So yeah, this song is Outside Inside.
Outside Inside.
Outside, people I know are marching. Outside, people I love are marching. Outside, mothers and fathers are out in the heat, and they're marching slowly down the street. Outside, Gandhi is disobeying. Outside, his disciples are praying. Outside, they're on a mission I don't understand, as they're marching slowly toward the sand. And if I join you, then what does that mean? Are all of you rebels or felons or saints, abandoning homes to march as one in the sun? No complaints. And if I stay here, then how am I seen? Does loving your country mean marching outside and staying inside means you don't? But I do, of course I do. Inside, I can stay under cover. Inside, I have a British lover. Inside, something is finally stirring away as an old foundation starts to shake. So for today, I'll choose to be proud. Say this is the way the British get beat. Rebelling against the British lords, not with swords, but with feet. And for today, I'm part of the crowd. For changing the world means marching outside, and staying inside means you won't. But I will, oh yes I will. So get up, Maya, get up, seize the day. Oh, get up, Maya, get up, don't stay.
Woohoo!
Thank you.
Oh, great. So beautifully put together. And look at all those amazing faces, all our friends singing their faces off. Everyone keep a lookout for the show. In fact, all these people's shows, because the great things are coming from all three of them. Cheeyang, you started the Lunar Collective, which is a place to create a space where Asian American music makers in New York City can gather. Why did you create this company?
Well, primarily because all of the people that I've worked with while developing both my shows really have the majority of those people are Asian American. And I was like, all these people are incredible. All these people have amazing voices. Let's do something together. So we've done a bunch of things. This year I've been languishing, but so we've done a bunch of covers. We did a little EP. We did like a holiday EP to like capture, what it's like to live in during COVID through the holidays. And it's just been fun. Honestly, everything that I've done during this 15 months of insane, quarantine pandemic time has just been fun for me and for the people that I engage with. And I think that's the most important thing, because for the longest time, I forgot what it felt like to be, happy doing what I love. It's always been like, oh, is this going to earn me money? Is this going to do this? Is this going to do that? And all that goes out the window during the pandemic, right? It's like,
yeah, let's
come back to your why, not like what you need to fulfill someone else's why or whatever. It's about, coming back to yourself and your being. And it's been very rewarding to think about that. Yeah.
Speaking of coming back, goes to all three of you. After the events of this past 15 months, do you feel hopeful that we're returning to an industry changed for the better? Anyone can jump in. I'm cautious because everything that has to do with the reopen, every news that has come out with regards to reopening just feels like, oh, we're going back to before. But I can't swear. Sorry. I don't fucking want to go back to before. I don't. Like let's carve out a space where people feel heard, and it's not just like me or it's about people who have been fighting this whole time in our industry to be seen and to be heard. And there's so many people. Like, stop doing The Nanny, the musical. I'm not gonna. Okay, maybe I shouldn't name all the names, but there are just so many shows that are like coming out and be like, why? I understand why, because it's a capitalist society and people are chasing money and all that. But that's a whole hour conversation right there. Any other brief thoughts on that?
Well, also, I just want this not to be like a trend, like, because right now, it's cool to include people of color and things. It's a trendy thing, right? And like, if you want to be cool, you're woke. And it's like, it's cool just because it's the right thing. And I think when I don't know if the industry has come to that conclusion. I don't know how much of it is also just I see a lot more representation, which is good. Like, that's a great end result. But I don't know if the motives are that they're doing it for corporate responsibility and, the optics, or if they really, feel it.
I'm cautiously, incredibly cautiously optimistic. I see on a personal level a lot of people and a lot of institutions trying to do the work. Whether or not the work is being achieved is a whole other thing, because I feel like 9 times out of 10, a lot of institutions have no idea where to begin. So they're just throwing things out there and being like, oh, if I just hire this one person, I'll make all of my problems go away. And it doesn't. It's just all of these issues are just so deeply rooted and systemic and have no easy solutions. So my greatest hope is that people don't lose steam, because I feel like the impetus is there. People people I hope are inherently good and want this change, and maybe are just really shitty at it. And so they just need to keep on trying. But the great news is there's like organizations like Live and in Color that are able to connect you with artists who, are who authentically represent. And it's just like, the best thing you can do for any artist of color is to hire them. So find them and hire them, and hire us at every level in your organization. Because
and I say hire us because we're damn good at what we do.
Exactly.
Yes.
And we can make you money.
Yes.
Speaking of Live and in Color, our mission is to connect diverse communities to create new stage works. I ask this question, I guess, every week. What does having an inclusive working environment mean to you?
I'll take that one first. I'll answer first. For me, it means not having to represent the entirety of my culture. Like, I can just represent myself. There's other people to represent all other facets of our culture. That is not just me lifting that entire world.
I love that. I love that so much. It's yeah.
You literally took the words out of my mouth. Like, literally that. And also, like, the day when I don't have to worry about like disappointing expectations, like, by bringing her on, I thought we were going to get X, and that's not what you get. And I don't have to worry. I don't have to think about that.
I think the most important thing for me is like safety, and it comes in all levels. I think it's like the feeling safe enough to voice your opinions about something if it's not the right thing that's happening, or because I love what Jessica said. Like, I don't need to be the voice of all X person. Like, I don't need to be the voice of all Chinese people, or I don't need to be the voice of all gay people. Just like, I'm not the answer. I'm one person. I bring my opinion and my expectations. But I think, and I've been in so many rooms now, that I think the idea of safety for the artist, for any artist coming into the space, being able to voice their thoughts without any like repercussions of like, oh, I might get fired because I said, this thing is wrong. I think that's so important. So, yeah.
Thank you. I know we have some questions from our viewers, so let's see what they have to ask. So Lena says, what type of stories are each of you drawn to?
That's such a broad question.
Yeah. It's a hard one.
I feel like I'll jump in first, I guess. Yeah. I feel like for me, it goes back to my questions about life. I think I think about life a little too much, so I am drawn to very dramatic not source materials, but just like dramatic stories that sort of try to answer the questions that I have. I would love to write a comedy, but I don't think I'm very good at it. But yeah, that's the kind of story I'm drawn to.
Yeah, I'm also drawn to stories that like are very honest about dealing with really messy things. Like, humans are messy people. Life is really, really messy, and there's nothing wrong with that. And like, it took me a long time to realize. I'm like still learning that. And so, stories that really can even tell, even in the slightest of ways, like show the beauty in the messiness. I tend to be really drawn to those.
I like some weird stuff. Like, I mean, not like, I think subject matter is like really, really open, right? But like the way to tell it in a weird way. I think that that's just personally my style of like, how can we just tell this in the most non-straightforward version? And maybe, I don't know if that's always the best thing, but that's what I'm drawn to.
All right, let's take another one. Musa, what kind of story do you want to write next? I mean, it's similar to that, but if what are your next projects? What's floating in your mind that you want to like?
Well, I'm really excited because I'm in the middle of one right now. I'm in the middle of a commission. It was it could have been in 3 parts of anything that I wanted in 3 parts, in 3 like 30-minute sections. And I chose to do like 3 parts of a 90-minute show. And I chose to do to write this entire play based on a tweet that I read that I was really, really drawn to, about like an alternate parallel reality that also kind of at the same time deals with some, personal, always personal trauma, right? Like turning that into like a weird alternate reality. So that's why I'm writing right now.
Cool. Any other upcoming new seeds of ideas you care to share?
Yeah, I just. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, Janet, please.
I just entered a new collaboration with this theater company called IPC. We're like adapting Frankenstein into like a hip hop musical. So it's a new team. Like we were brought together by the organizers. So I didn't know any of the other writers on the project. So I'm stoked for that. Also, wait, I was just about to say something. Story. Oh, I guess this relates to the question you just had about messy stories. Like I'm simultaneously trying to write musicals and work on my album. And I find it very difficult to figure out like what songs go where, like which are my singer-songwriter stuff and which is like which go into, because they're very, very much one and the same. Like the stories that I want to tell, there's really no differentiation. So one of the musicals I'm developing, I'm looking for a book writer. So that is my next to-do, is find a dope-ass
well, if
book
there's any
writer.
book writers out there, Janet's hiring.
Yeah.
Cheeyang, anything? Any new
projects? I mean, so many ideas, but it's like 2021, the year of languishing. But we want to like seize the moment. I mean, there are a bunch of projects I'm working on. We're pitching something to Disney, and we're also me and my collaborator. Well, I'm like, do I want to talk about it? I don't know. I mean, they're just fun things that are on our plate right now, and question marks. They're always question marks. It's like, what's gonna happen? Who knows? So I don't really have like that much to share, but yeah.
We have time for one more question. Let's see. Sophie says, how do you go about finding people you want to write with? Oh, that's
a good question. I think it's okay. It's like supposed to be really easy. And in some ways it's super easy, right? Because there's so many talented people in our very small like network of writers in theater.
Oh, she froze.
She froze.
She was about to drop some wisdom.
I know. It was probably the most profound thing. Just one of you want to jump in?
Yeah, I can jump in because this is something that I do feel very strongly about, and something that I've learned at NYU is interesting. That's what I would say. Like, but the one thing. Oh, she's back.
Sorry.
No. You should drop your wisdom first before I finish my thought.
I don't even know what I was saying before I got flipped. Sorry.
Finding collaborators, finding writing partners.
Oh, honestly, like I've been just reaching out to directors I know who I'd be like, hey, do you know someone who XYZ and would vibe with me because you know how I am, who I am, and trying to find people that way. But it's still hard.
Yeah.
And to continue my thought, I think finding a collaborator that you work well with is going to be so hard because you work a certain way, like I work a certain way, and doesn't mean that anyone who's a good writer is going to gel with that, right? So you kind of really need to know yourself and kind of need to know what you expect of someone else and meet in the middle. I think you need to find someone that speaks your language. It doesn't matter if they're the best writer. If they can't speak the language we speak, there's no way that you're gonna have more fiction than you're gonna have more content. And that's something that I learned definitely at NYU, because we were paired with 18 people, and you really get to learn about yourself a lot, because it's like, oh, I do these things that drive people crazy, and like other people do these things that drive me crazy. So I don't want to, like, it's a very interesting dynamic. But theater, is the most collaborative art form, because it's not just the person that you write with, like Jessica was saying, like director, choreographer, light, set design, just so many people. And so learning how to collaborate is very important. That's like,
Yes,
Yeah.
any thoughts?
I mean, everything that Janet and Cheeyang said, but like also that it's almost a little like dating, right? Like, there's, and I think there's a lot of, and there ain't nothing wrong with just doing it yourself as well, where you're like, oh, I'm totally cool on my own. But I think that a lot of us choose to collaborate and find strength in collaborating, and it's a lot like dating, because you just really don't know until you get to know the collaborator and you're like in the trenches with them, and shit starts to go wrong or shit starts to go right, and how you pick up each other's like how you keep on passing the ball is something that's I think I don't know if you're ever going to know it until you do it. So it's just a lot like dating. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Janet.
One thing you just made me think of social media. The one like good thing with social media, I feel like, is it makes it super easy. Like the culture of it makes it super easy to just like approach people and be like, hey, you want to like write something together, or hey, you want to like work on this thing together. So actually that's something I have found really helpful. And that's how I found a lot of like new collaborators during the pandemic, literally just like random people on social media. And that's one of the reasons why I do post, even though I'm still not. Yeah, like one of the reasons I do like putting stuff up on social is that it's a really easy way to just find people who vibe with the stuff you're making. And that's just like one step. Like Cheeyang was saying, like, of course you have to mesh and collaborate well process-wise, but like vibe too is like so hard to find. So like that's one really easy way to just find people who's like sing with you on the same level or same wavelength.
Yeah. Well, we are out of time. I thank you for joining me. I am your biggest fan, the three of you. Make sure to like follow them on all their socials to see all the fabulous stuff they're doing and listen to all the amazing work they're doing. Before we go, for our audience, please consider supporting our organization by going to liveandincolor.org to donate. As we mentioned earlier, in honor of AAPI month, all donations made during this program will be matched dollar for dollar. So please make a tax-deductible donation today to support the work of the artists at Live and in Color right now. All the money goes to support amazing artists like these three and developing their new work. Next week, join us for the 4th episode in our special month celebrating Asian artists and activists who are changing the future of theater in the world. We'll be talking to 2 amazing women who are changing theater for the next generation, Broadway's own J. Elaine Marcos and Bayor Klee. They will be talking to us about their work as teaching artists and even bringing on a few students. You'll be seeing the stars of tomorrow. You won't want to miss it. Thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Thank you to my amazing guests and friends. I love you all. Cheeyang, would you lead us in a little toast as we say goodbye?
Sure, I shall. So to less languishing, more stories, and more representation on stage. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you all.
Cheers.